Hey guys, as we wind down tonight, we step into the warm haze of a Roman bathhouse, where the air smells like oil, sweat, ambition, and something vaguely fungal that no one's willing to admit is coming from their sandals. Steam curls up from the caldarium. Water drips. Duh. Someone coughs in the next chamber and you try to ignore it. You're wrapped in a thin towel, clinging to your dignity and hoping the marble bench isn't as slippery as it looks. It is. You might think this is luxury, the spa day of the ancient world. No, you're here to sweat, scrape, and socialize, sometimes all at once. This is hygiene by committee, and if you're looking for peace and quiet, you've come to the wrong empire. Before you settle in, please take a moment to give the video a like and hit subscribe if you truly enjoying the journey. You can also leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from, what time it is there. It's always a small wonder to see people tuning in from so many corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that gentle hum in the background, and together, let's ease into tonight's story. You're not a senator, not a gladiator, not even a merchant. You read just someone trying to make it through a day in the Roman Empire with your eyebrows unburnt and your towels still in place. But in the bathhouse, even that is ambitious. The tiles are hot enough to cook garum, the gossip could ruin your career, and the man scrubbing your back is also secretly judging your posture. You breathe in steam, you breathe out regret. You're not even clean yet, and already you miss your filthy, unventilated apartment. Because here's the truth. A Roman bathhouse wasn't just about bathing. It was a daily ritual of politics, pain, heat, humiliation, and very slippery floors. Let's begin. The sun hasn't even bothered to rise yet, and you're already awake. Not gently. Not peacefully. You're hauled out of sleep like a sack of overcooked lentils. The air is cool, your breath fogs, but you don't get to enjoy the chill. You're headed for the caldarium, the hottest, wettest, angriest room in the Roman bathhouse. You are not a patron. You are not here to soak. You are here to suffer. The caldarium is a furnace with delusions of grandeur. It's essentially a stone oven filled with moist ambition. The walls sweat before you do. The floor, a cheerful mosaic of burning regret, scalds your soles through the worn leather of your sandals. You wanted sandals? You got regret mittens for your feet. You carry a bucket in one hand, a rag in the other, and a deep, slow sigh in your soul. The bucket is heavy. The rag is damp in that way that suggests it's never been fully dry since the time of Augustus. Your job: scrub the benches, wipe the floor, clear the drains, and not die. That last part is harder than it sounds. See, the patrons haven't arrived yet, which means this is the only time the place is unfull of yelling senators and oil-slick merchants. But it's not peaceful, it hisses. Steam pours out of cracks, like the walls themselves are sighing. The heat is alive here, not metaphorically, actually alive. Breathes down your neck, slaps you across the cheek, and crawls inside your lungs like a damp python that's taken offense. You think you'll just clean the tiles quickly? No. The soot from the hypocaust system has settled like bitter, sticky fog. You scrub? The soot laughs. Scrub harder. The brush falls apart. You try again with the rag. It smears more than it cleans, but you keep going. You're paid in food, not progress. Maybe you think this is just a quick morning chore. It isn't. There are 10 rooms to clean. Each one has its own personality, and they're all mean. The caldarium is the angry drunk uncle. The frigidarium is a sarcastic glacier. The tepidarium is... disappointed in you. Let's not forget the patrons. They're not in yet. But when they arrive, your life becomes a game of don't get yelled at while invisible. You scrub too close. You're in the way. You scrub too far. It's dirty and you're lazy. Cough. Someone complains about plague. You stay quiet. Someone accuses you of plotting something. You try to avoid eye contact, except everyone is naked. So now you're just staring at marble, not the floor marble, the people marble. Pale, round, and likely to insult you with a flick of a towel. But you'll get breakfast soon, maybe. More likely you'll get yelled at because someone slipped on oil and assumed it was your fault. You didn't spill it. You just haven't mopped up all of society's bodily secrets fast enough. You carry the bucket. You carry the rag. You carry the knowledge that tomorrow you'll do it all again. There's no soap. There's no reward. There's no escape. But the caldarium is warm. Too warm. Oppressively warm. And for one brief moment, you consider lying down on the stone bench, pretending you're a statue. and hoping no one notices until spring. You'd think water would be your friend. It's everywhere in a bathhouse, after all. Pools, basins, trickling pipes and buckets, an aquatic dream. But no, water in the caldarium is not your ally.
Oh, yes.
It's your slippery, scalding enemy with no concept of personal space. You begin the next chore. Draining the overflow basin, it should be simple. It's not. First, you have to wedge open the stone plug with a bent piece of bronze that barely qualifies as a tool. It wiggles. It resists. It pretends not to know you. Eventually, it bursts free like a toddler with boundary issues. And you re-rewarded with a face full of water that's been marinating in toe juice and political secrets. You sputter. The basin gurgles. Somewhere in the distance, someone laughs. No one is supposed to be here yet. Excellent. That means you've hallucinated the laughter. Again, the floor, of course, is a mosaic. A beautiful, ancient, cursed mosaic. The tiles are slippery, even when dry, which they never are, and arranged in such a way that the dolphin pattern always seems to be judging your gait. One wrong step and you're sprawled across Neptune's beard, covered in someone else's massage oil and regret. You try to mop. A mop is a bundle of twigs tied with a string. It functions with the enthusiasm of a hungover eel. You press it to the floor, it skates away. You retrieve it, try again. It leaves a gentle, mocking smear across the tiles, like a snail trail of failure. Someone shouts, "Not at you. Not yet, but it's coming." It always is. There's a protocol to shouting in the bathhouse. First, they shout for warm water, then for the masseur. Then, if there's a draft, they shout at whoever happens to be visible. And guess who is always visible when someone's angry and wet? You. You duck into the back corner to scrub the heater grate. It's coated in a thick crust of lime, soot, and something unidentifiable that might once have been a fig. The brush clatters against the metal. The steam clings to your skin. Your tunic, already damp, turns clingy. Not in a sentimental way, in the way that makes it feel like you're being hugged by a wet parchment scroll. You tell yourself this is just temporary. One day you might be assigned to the frigidarium. It's colder, it's cleaner. Fewer shouting men, but then again, fewer tips. Patrons sometimes toss a coin your way if you fetch extra oil or retrieve their dropped sandals. Of course, you're not allowed to keep the coins. They go to your master. You keep the memory and the sandal stench. Back in the caldarium, someone's arrived early. It's a minor official, red-faced and already irritated. He wants more heat. You stoke the furnace. He wants less steam. You open a vent. Wants someone else to blame for his skin condition. That's harder. You find the moment. That sacred, mythical moment where no one's looking. Steal 3 seconds to stand still. The room pulses with heat. The water bubbles. The air smells like ambition boiled in a gym sock. You breathe in, you try not to melt. Then someone drops a strigil. It clatters. So do you. Running, bending, wiping, apologizing. Again, there's no pause. There's no pity. There's no towel for you. Only steam and shouting. And the next task? You tell yourself it's just a job. Everyone works. Romans believe in order, routine, hierarchy. That's what they say. What they mean is, you do everything, and they occasionally acknowledge you exist. If they trip over you, today, you're tasked with hauling oil jars from the storeroom to the appetiterium, the changing room, except these aren't dainty amphorae filled with scented elegance. No, these are enormous ceramic vessels with the grace of a sleeping ox and the weight of an overfed senator. You hoist one. It sloshes. Olive oil swirls inside like it's contemplating freedom. Your grip slips, your spine protests, and for a fleeting moment you wonder if this is how you die. Crushed by a snack lubricant. The floor doesn't help. It's still damp. Always damp. Your sandals make that awful squelch with every step, like you re-walking across a lazy octopus. You shuffle forward, praying not to drop the jar. Because if you do, the oil won't just coat the floor. It will summon patrons like flies to honey, each of them demanding compensation or blame, or possibly both. You reach the destination. Sort of. There's a cluster of dignitaries blocking the way, each wrapped in towels the size of ship sails. They don't move. You wait. They talk about politics, about someone's affair, about the vinegar shortage. Stand there, holding 50 pounds of olive disappointment, trying not to breathe too loud. Eventually, someone glances at you and waves, not to acknowledge you, of course, to move the jar. You do carefully, reverently, like you're cradling the future of the Republic. You return for the next one. Along the way, you pass the furnace chamber, the hypocostum. It breathes like a dragon that gave up on ambition, but still insists on huffing. The fire slaves work here, blackened with soot, stripped to the waist, shoveling fuel into the ravenous belly of the system. You nod at them. They nod back. Mutual recognition. We are both parts of the same miserable machine. On your 5th trip, you're intercepted by a bath attendant. He needs someone to clean vomit out of the tepidarium basin. Someone important overindulged in oysters and philosophy.
How lucky you.
You arrive. It's worse than you expected. The water is warm, cloudy, and deeply judgmental. You don't ask what's floating. You just get in. Not into the water, but into the mental state required to scoop chunks of patrician regret from a public pool. Like you fetch a small wooden ladle, the kind usually reserved for perfumed oils. Not today. Today, it's repurposed for disgrace. Scoop, dump. Repeat. Each movement is accompanied by an internal scream. Ouch. But externally, you remain silent. Because if you gag too loudly, someone might think you're criticizing the Empire. Someone passes by, sees what you're doing, and laughs. Glad I'm not you, he says. You smile politely. On the inside, you imagine pushing him into the basin, just gently. Just enough. But you don't, because you still have more jars to carry. More oil, more towels, more heat, more days, exactly like this one. Stacked end to end like clay bricks in a wall no one wants to lean on. You take a break, or at least you try to. There's a corner behind the strigil shelf. A shadowy little wedge of mercy where the steamed dozing tea bite quite as hard. And the smell of boiled humanity is only mildly offensive. You sit. Not comfortably, that's not allowed. You perch on the edge of a broken tile, knees up, elbows on them, heart somewhere near your ankles. This is the part no one sees. The quiet in between. It's the moments when you're not scrubbing, not hauling, not dodging complaints. You'd like to believe these moments matter. They don't. The silence is short-lived. A patron portly, important, and oiled to a reflective sheen. Barks your name, not your real one. Not just the one they've decided is easier to shout across a bathhouse. He wants hotter water. Of course he does. You rise. Your knees crack like cheap pottery. You shuffle to the furnace chamber. Tell the fire slaves to feed the flames. They do without comment. The fire hisses. The water gurgles. Somewhere someone claps as though you've just invented warmth. You head back through the halls, past the latrines. They're overflowing again. That's not your problem today. It's tomorrow almost definitely. A child darts by, not a slave. A patron's son. It's naked, slippery, and determined to make your job harder. He kicks your bucket. Water sloshes out. His mother watches. Says nothing. You mop the floor again. Sort of. It's more of a polite suggestion to the grime now. You check the oil shelves. The amphorae are nearly empty. You'll have to refill them. Again, each jug is taller than your torso, with handles that exist mostly as a joke. They slosh with the thick, syrupy remnants of pressed olives and ambition. You don't get the good oil. It's for the guests. You get the leftovers, the bottom scrapings, the sediment, the liquid equivalent of disappointment, and the towels. Let's talk about towels. They're not fluffy. They're not soft. They're rough, worn, and permanently damp. Like a grudge that never fully dries. You stack them anyway, folding them in a way that suggests someone might someday appreciate your effort. No one ever does. Sometimes they're stained. Sometimes they're alive. You shake them before folding. Just in case. As you pass through the appetiterium again, a man stops you. Man's his sandals. You point to the shelf. He frowns. No, he wants you to fetch them. They're 3 feet away. You bend, hand them over, and he clicks his tongue at how dusty they are. They've been sitting there for 2 hours. You nod. You apologize. You are, after all, responsible for dust now. The man leaves. Another arrives. Then another. Soon, the whole room is a swirl of shouting, scraping, pouring, clapping, gossiping, farting, and posturing. The bathhouse has come alive, which means your brief pause is officially over. The day will end eventually. You'll get a crust of bread, maybe a spoonful of lentils. We'll sleep near the furnace again, where it's warm but smells like burning feet and old sandals. You'll wake up sore. And tomorrow, you'll be back in the caldarium. It's with your bucket and your rag. And no thanks at all. You have a task now. A simple one, they say. Just refill the oil flasks, which, in theory, sounds like a quiet job. You picture yourself pouring sweet-scented oil into elegant glass containers, maybe humming a tune. You are wrong. Again. The oil room is tucked into a back corridor where light dies and mold thrives. It smells like old olives, wet sandals, and the kind of regret that doesn't wash off. The amphorae sit like squat guardians, corked and bloated. You unseal one. It burps. It's not a metaphor. It literally belches a wave of rancid air into your face. This is the dregs. The bottom layers where the oil has separated, soured, and possibly evolved. You stir with a wooden rod. It resists. Not because it's thick, because it's resentful. Eventually, the surface gives. You begin to ladle the stuff into smaller jugs. Slowly, carefully, each scoop drips with the speed of a lazy snail dragging a wet sponge. You spill some on your tunic. Now you smell like a salad with self-esteem issues. You carry the flasks back to the massage chamber. Masseur nods barely. He's busy applying oil to a merchant who is convinced his sore shoulders are a matter of state importance. You set the flasks down. One is rejected immediately. 2, cloudy. Another is too cold. A third smells funny, whatever that means. You take them all back. Maybe today you'll get to restock the perfumes. Those at least smell like ambition wrapped in flowers. But no, perfumes are for trained slaves, trusted slaves. You are not trusted. You are functional. You return to the appetiterium and are assigned a new task. Brushing down the benches. Not with a brush, mind you. With a reed bundle tied to a stick and a handful of wet straw, you bend, you brush, you sweat. The straw disintegrates halfway through. You try again. The benches are still warm from the last patrons. Their imprint lingers, not metaphorically. Physically, you can see the imprint, and whatever else they left behind. You clean it anyway. Then there's the lost hand found. Except there's no shelf, no bin, no polite signs. Just you holding a stray sandal, a half-empty flask, and a towel with suspicious stains. You ask around. No one claims them. One man takes the flask anyway, says it looks familiar. He leaves. It wasn't his. You're told to track inventory now. You smile. You don't know how to write. You nod anyway. And make small scratches in the wall to remember what went where. 3 sandals, 2 flasks, 1 oil jar, half a towel. You count in silence. You memorize with the desperation of someone who knows a miscount will mean a night without food. Patron drops a strigil. Again, you fetch it. Again, he doesn't say thank. Again. The floor is wet. Again. You are tired always. Somewhere, laughter echoes off the tile. You wonder what's funny. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's all of it. Maybe laughter's the only thing lighter than steam in here. You pick up your rag. You pick up your bucket. You keep going. Midday arrives not with fanfare, but with fatigue. You don't track it by a sundial. You track it by how much your knees hurt, and how many patrons have complained about things beyond your control. The temperature, the smell, their marriages. You are not the gods. You are a mop with legs. Someone demands fresh towels. Again, you fetch them. Again, except the storage room is nearly empty, and the only linens left are either damp, torn, or inhabited by something with legs. You choose the least offensive one and hope for the best. The patron frowns, then waves you away like a fly that dared dream of significance. The heat in the caldarium has reached its peak. The air is thick enough to butter. Patrons sit in stone alcoves, sweating and discussing things like inheritance, theater, and why you're taking so long with their water ladle. You nod. You fetch. You don't speak. Silence is your best defense. Quiet slave is efficient. Quiet slave doesn't get noticed. A quiet slave might, with luck, make it to old age, assuming the baths don't cook him first. You mop again, not because it's dirty, but because mopping looks like work, and work is safer than waiting. The mop is limp now. The string is given up. It's a brush in name only. more ceremonial than practical, like a senator's morals. You get called to the sudatorium next. The steam room. You hate the steam room. It's a fog bank with walls. Visibility drops to the length of your nose. Patrons lie on benches like overcooked pasta, whispering gossip that slides through the mist like oily ghosts. You're supposed to tidy the floor without tripping over someone's leg, ego, or discarded cup. You crawl. You feel with your hands. You wipe blindly. Someone coughs. You freeze. Was that a plague cough? A dramatic sigh? A subtle warning? It doesn't matter. You clean faster. One man drops his cup. He doesn't see it. You find it with your shin. It rolls. You chase it. It rolls again. Eventually you catch it. You hold it up. No one acknowledges it. You place it back where it might have been. Good enough. The air in the sudatorium smells like rosemary, sweat, and ambition gone sour. You're soaked now, not just from steam, but from your own body, trying to evaporate in protest. Your tunic clings like bad decisions. Your fingers wrinkle. You blink through the fog. Still no exit in sight. You hear someone say your name. Maybe not your name, just the version they've decided is easier to shout. You respond anyway. He needs a footstool. For his foot. You suggest, gently, that the bench is designed for sitting in feet. He frowns. You bring him a stool. It's the same height. He nods in vague dissatisfaction. You return to your corner. Steam has erased geometry. But you stand there anyway, pretending not to exist, not to drip, not to breathe too loudly. And when the bell rings, the one that signals the approach of someone truly important, you know exactly what that means. New towels, hot water, reheated misery, all over again. Afternoon brings no relief. It's just more feet, more steam, more small indignities stacked like amphorae in a dusty storeroom. Stop checking the sun. It doesn't matter. Time in the bathhouse runs on sweat and sighs, not hours. You're assigned to sweep the laconicum. The dry heat chamber. It's quieter there, at least. The kind of silence that feels suspicious, like the room is waiting to pounce. The floor is hot, not warm, not cozy. Hot, like it resents your presence and is trying to char your toes into submission. You sweep. The broom is made of bundled reeds and hollow optimism. Dust dances in the dry air, swirling around you like gossip with nowhere to go. You choke slightly, but not too loudly. A loud cough might be mistaken for illness. Illness leads to questions. Questions lead to replacements. And replacements don't come with funerals. You find things here. Scraps of linen, a broken comb, the husk of a sandal that died a slow, tragic death. You collect them. There's a box somewhere for unclaimed items. It's always full. No one wants to reclaim what was lost in sweat. Someone wanders in. He lies down on the marble bench like a cat claiming territory. He wants someone to fan him. That someone is you. You wave a palm frond, slowly, steadily, like you're trying to cool down the very concept of disappointment. He doesn't look at you, just lifts one finger slightly when your rhythm slows. You fan faster. Another man arrives and starts complaining about the noise in the tepidarium. You nod solemnly as if you personally disapprove of the unruly acoustics. Even though you're 80% sure it was just two senators arguing about fig prices. Again, you excuse yourself. Slowly, and are immediately reassigned to the oil scraping station. That's where you stand with a bowl and a cloth, collecting whatever comes off patrons' backs when they're raked with a strigil. Dead skin, oil, sweat, mystery substances, the works. It's warm, it's sticky, it's not voluntary. One man tips you, copper coin. You can't keep it, of course. Yeah, but you hold it for a moment. A tiny, filthy badge of recognition. Then you hand it over to the overseer who nods like he personally invented currency. Back to work. You clean the strigils next. They're beautiful in a way. Curved bronze tools shaped like crescent moons, or tiny torture devices designed by someone with opinions about hygiene. You scrub them in a shallow basin with water that hasn't been changed since Neptune was relevant. The grime swirls. You look away. A patron calls for oil. Not the common stuff. It's a perfumed kind. The expensive kind. It's the kind you're not supposed to touch without supervision. You fetch it anyway. Carefully, as if carrying the reputation of Rome in a clay jug, you spill a drop. Just one. The patron notices. He doesn't yell. He stares. You apologize. He continues staring. You bow, you back away. You return to the common oil and resume your post beside the scraping bowl. And now here you are again, with your bowl, with your rag. With a nose full of rosemary and regret, pretending this is normal, because here it is. Your hands are raw. Not metaphorically, literally. The skin around your knuckles is pink and puckered, your nails edged with grit. You don't remember when that started? It's probably around the 3rd bucket of the morning, or maybe the 2nd century. Your next task is to fetch charcoal for the furnace. Again, the path to the charcoal room is narrow, slanted, and wet with ancient leaks that no one plans to fix. You carry an empty basket, which mocks you by being the lightest thing you'll touch today. You duck under a cracked arch, past storage urns older than your parents, and descend into the slightly too dark corridor where the charcoal waits like a sack of small, judgmental bones. It smells like dust and smoke and the end of hope. You fill the basket. Slowly, each lump leaves a smear. By the time you're done, your arms are streaked in black, and your tunic looks like you've been wrestling soot demons. You return to the furnace chamber. The fire slaves nod again. It's a tired ritual, this nodding. Like 2 ships acknowledging mutual shipwreck, you pour the charcoal into the brazier. Sparks dance up. One lands on your foot. You say nothing. The overseer appears. He tells you the drain by the frigidarium is clogged. Of course it is. You go. The frigidarium is the cold bath, a stone pool filled with water so cold it feels personal. It's the only room where your skin doesn't sting from heat. Instead, it recoils from icy revenge. The drain is near the steps. You squat, reach in, and immediately regret everything. The water numbs your fingers, then bites them. Blockage is mushy. That's the worst kind of blockage. It means someone's sandal, or something less polite, got caught in the grating. You pull. It resists. You pull harder. Something gives. Small wave splashes your face. You sit back. You try not to scream. Succeed. Barely, you flush your hands in a bucket. The water's brown. It doesn't help. A senator walks by. He says, "You missed a spot on the stairs." You bow. You mop. You don't ask which spot. You wouldn't know anyway. You clean faster. Your stomach growls. You ignore it. Hunger isn't a sensation anymore. It's just part of your breathing pattern. In, out, rumble. In, out, ache. You sit by the doorway. Not on the bench. That's for patrons. You sit on the floor. It's still damp. Of course it is. You watch the water ripple. Someone jumps in. The splash coats your knees. You don't flinch. That's progress. Another patron approaches. He wants his sandals oiled. Yes. Apparently that's a thing. You nod. You reach for the oil. You don't ask why. You don't ask anything. You just dip the cloth, rub the leather, and think about sleep. Not deep sleep. Just enough to count as forgetting. Later, when the baths close, you'll sweep again. You'll pour more water. You'll empty the drain. You'll think. Tomorrow, maybe it'll be different. It won't. But thinking it might. That's your luxury. The bathhouse is winding down now. Not quietly, but slowly, like a banquet guest who insists on one more anecdote. While everyone else is scraping chairs and pretending not to yawn, you begin closing duties. That sounds official. It isn't. It means scraping congealed oil from the edge of the Caldarian pool. It's not a job, so much as a gentle insult wrapped in a task. The oil has formed a kind of film, part biological, part philosophical, that doesn't want to leave. You use a dull blade. It squeaks. It flakes. Your back protests. Your back protests louder. You pause for a moment, not to rest. That's frowned upon. You pause to rotate your spine in the hope it dosen. T-snap like an old cart axle. It holds, barely. A patron still lingers nearby, submerged to the chest, eyes half closed. He's not sleeping. He's waiting for someone to scrub his shoulders. You glance around. No one else moves. You volunteer. Of course you do. You kneel beside him. Your knees hiss in pain as they touch the tile. You take the cloth. You scrub. He talks about grain prices. His neighbor's dog. His third wife's poetry. You nod. You murmur agreement. You keep scrubbing. His skin is oiled, sweaty, and faintly scented with crushed bay leaves and superiority. You finish. He nods. That's the closest you'll get to thanks. You return the cloth to the basin. It's murky now, the color of resignation. You don't change it. What'd be the point? begin collecting the lost items scattered around the tepidarium. A sandal, a hairpin, someone's half-eaten date. Put them all in the same basket. You don't have time for curation. If it's not alive, it goes in the basket. You sweep the changing room. The dust swirls in tired spirals. You chase it with a broom that now resembles an underfed shrub. It sheds as much as it gathers. You wipe benches again. Not because they need it. It's because someone will ask tomorrow if you did. The light dims. Torches are lit. Shadows stretch across the mosaic floor like exhausted dancers heading home. You still have to pour buckets down the drains. The water echoes. Each splash sounds like a tiny sigh. You clean the massage table, a slab of wood that has absorbed the anxieties of 20 men. It creaks. You don't. The overseer appears. He inspects the room. He points at a spot on the wall. Missed a drip, he says. You wipe it. He nods. He leaves. Stand in the middle of the caldarium now, surrounded by stillness that isn't peace. Just absence. The kind of silence that waits for tomorrow to start screaming again. You gather your tools. The rag, the bucket, the mop, the tongs, the scoop, the small brass scraper. The dignity you dropped somewhere around midday. You leave that. Your tunic is soaked, your hands blistered, and your thoughts feel like they've been boiled into soup. But you made it. You didn't collapse. You didn't get yelled at more than usual. You didn't break anything. That counts as success. For a slave in the Roman bathhouse, survival is the victory parade you never get to attend. Night falls, or rather it limps in. You don't see the stars. You see the flickering of oil lamps catching on steam, and the way shadows settle into the corners like tired cats. The bathhouse is closed, but you're not done. You never are. Final task? Collect the laundry. The laundry, of course, is not fresh linens folded in neat stacks. It's towels. Hundreds of them, damp, crumpled, stained, occasionally folded into disturbing shapes by accident. Towels left behind on benches, under tables, hanging over doors, and once, bafflingly inside a jar of olive oil. You gather them all. The pile grows. So does the smell. It's a rich bouquet of sweat, herbs, old seawater, and something that might once have been meat. You hold your breath. That doesn't help. The towels don't care. You carry the load out to the washing troughs, a series of sunken basins behind the bathhouse, where water trickles in from a pipe that gurgles ominously. You drop the towels in. The splash is loud. Small rat fleas. You wish you could too. You wash. That's the word. Implies scrubbing, rinsing, lifting, twisting. What actually happens is, you stir the mess with a stick and pray the water does its part. You wring one out. It spits. Not water. Not entirely. You don't ask questions. You rinse another. It leaks something pink. You don't ask questions. You find one with a bronze coin tied in the hem. A patron's tip, perhaps. Or a forgotten bribe. You hold it for a moment. Then, like always, you drop it into the overseer's collection bowl. You finish rinsing. You hang the towels on ropes stretched between poles. They flap limply in the night breeze, like surrender flags stitched from damp regrets. You sit on the edge of the trough. Your feet dangle. Your hands soak in cold water because you can't feel your fingers otherwise. You look around. The bathhouse is dark now. Quiet. No senators. No shouting. No orders. Just the drip-drip of water and the slow hiss of heat dying from the stones. This is your time. Not freedom. Not peace. But a moment that belongs to no one else. You watch steam curl up and vanish into the night. Your tunic is still wet. Your back still aches. You'll sleep on a mat in the laundry alcove. It smells like towels, but at least it's warm. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. You'll carry, scrub, rinse, haul, bow, nod, apologize, scrape, mop, and pretend. You think maybe in another life you'd be a guest here, stretching in the heat, barking for oil, nodding as someone fetched your shoes? Maybe. But not this one. In this life, you clean the caldarium. And when the last towel is hung, the last water dumped, and the last lamp snuffed out, you lie down and dream of silence. The senator arrives just after midday. Not early, not late, but with the precision of someone who believes time should wait for him. He does not walk. He enters, as if the room has been patiently waiting to receive him. You watch him, of course. Everyone does. That's your job. To be present, but unnoticed. But some men demand attention even when silent. He's one of them. His name isn't important. You've heard it. Whispered in corners and muttered with forced respect, but it shifts depending on who's speaking. To some, he's a loyal public servant. To others, he's the reason their cousin lost a vineyard. You don't care? If he's a man with soft hands and loud sandals, that's all you need to know. Today, he chooses the tepidarium, the warm room. The halfway point between cold clarity and hot confusion, the room of pause. It suits him. He settles onto the stone bench with the grace of someone who's never cleaned one. His attendant spreads a cloth. Another pours oil over his shoulder. You adjust the coals in the brazier. He does not notice. The air in the tepidarium is different. Not oppressive like the caldarium, not biting like the frigidarium. It lingers, heavy with warmth, but also with the kinds of secrets that stick to your skin. This is where men speak softly and listen harder. The senator is speaking now about grain, or taxes, or both. You hear only fragments. Words like evasion, conscription, and misunderstanding float past you like lazy bees looking for gossip. He laughs. The kind of laugh that means something else entirely. Someone asks him about a law. He says it's being reviewed, which means it isn't. Another asks about a rival. He says he's unwell, which means he's about to be. You refill his water bowl? The steam curls around your hand like a snake pretending to be affectionate. He doesn't look at you, but his tone lowers, and now the room listens harder. He speaks of an upcoming vote. You pretend not to hear. He mentions names. You forget them immediately, for your own safety. He takes a deep breath, not the sigh of a man enjoying warmth, a deeper breath, measured, like he's tasting the air for poison. You've seen this before, not often, just enough to recognize it. A pause too long, a breath too heavy, a glance that doesn't land. He shifts, his eyes flutter, his fingers twitch. Just once, then stillness, not the relaxed kind, the kind that hums with wrongness. His attendants murmur. One nudges him. He doesn't respond. Another shakes him. Gently, then not. Still nothing. The room stiffens. Whispers rise. Someone says his name. Someone else says stroke. Another says assassination, much too eagerly. You step back. Instinct, not from guilt, from survival. Because no matter how he died, natural or not, someone will need a scapegoat, or the one who was closest. The moment stretches strange and brittle like a spider web in the wind. Tense, shimmering, just about to snap. You stand very still. Moving too quickly makes you suspicious. Not moving at all makes you memorable. Neither is ideal. Someone shouts for a physician. Not a real one, just the Bathhouse doctor, who mostly treats stubbed toes and egos. He arrives, breathless, pale, with a linen bag and an expression that suggests he'd rather be anywhere else, even the frigidarium. The physician kneels, feels for a pulse, sniffs the senator's breath, frowns theatrically, and declares nothing. Yet, that's the safest diagnosis. Nothing yet. The attendants are fussing now, dabbing the senator's brow with towels soaked in warm water, then cold, then warm again. You don't know if they're trying to revive him or season him. Either way, it's not working. He's not moving, not blinking, not breathing probably. But no one wants to be the first to say that. You inch back along the edge of the bench, pretending to tidy something that doesn't need tidying. You're not the only one doing this. Servant girl rearranges the oil flasks with unnecessary vigor. Another slave refolds a towel for the third time. You're all engaged in the ancient Roman ritual of avoiding blame through busy work. A merchant mutters something about poison. Someone else insists it must be natural. He was red in the face earlier, and flushed, and breathing heavily. All signs, apparently, of being extremely alive, right up until he wasn't. Someone suggests the wine. The wine that was brought in earlier. The wine you didn't pour, thankfully. That task belonged to an apprentice who has now disappeared in the direction of a small door and a fast exit. The physician declares it was probably the heat, or maybe his heart, possibly his politics. That last one gets a nervous chuckle. No one repeats it. You're ordered to bring water, not to drink. For ceremony, washing the body. Sign of respect. A sign that someone important has died, and that the rest of you are not yet blamed. You fetch the cleanest bowl you can find, which is to say, the least offensive. You dip the cloth. You dab gently at the senator's forehead, which is still warm. Unnervingly so. For a moment, you imagine he'll blink, sit up. Scream, he doesn't. You step back. His attendants are whispering now, deciding who needs to be notified, which family member to summon, and most importantly, how to control the story. A senator can't just die in a bathhouse. That's undignified, unless it's turned into a parable. You're already drafting it. He died in contemplation, died peacefully. He died surrounded by the warmth of Rome itself. You say nothing. You know he died mid-sentence? Mid-lie, probably? Surrounded by lukewarm ambition and the sound of his own voice? But you'll keep that to yourself. You pour the rest of the water into the basin. Quietly, carefully, because nothing stains faster than power falling silent. You're told not to speak of it, not directly, not with anyone who might be interested. Which, in the bathhouse, is everyone. Still, word leaks like steam through a cracked pipe, unstoppable, curling into ears and imaginations alike. By sundown, 3 different versions of the senator's death are already circulating. He was poisoned by a political rival using imported herbs from Numidia. He was struck down by the gods for arrogance during a debate about temple funding. He simply relaxed too, hardened, forgot to start breathing again. None of them mentioned the towel. The towel, still damp and folded beside his bench, is now sacred. No one dares touch it. You'd clean it normally. But now it sits ominous and squishy, as if absorbing gossip by osmosis. They've sent for his family. That means 2 things: ceremony and supervision. You're tasked with preparing the tepidarium for the return visit, which naturally means scrubbing every inch of it like your life depends on it. Because, in a sense, it might. You clean the benches, clean the floor, clean the walls. You clean things that weren't dirty, aren't dirty, and physically can't be dirty like the air. Someone tells you to make it smell less tragic. You sprinkle dried rose petals in the brazier and hope for the best. While you scrub, the attendants whisper, not about grief, about optics. Will there be statues? Should they rename the bath? How much should they mention the location of death in the official statement? The senator's last moments are being chiseled into history. Before his body is cooled, you're assigned to polish the brass fixtures. You didn't know there were brass fixtures. You'd find 2. One is mostly green. Shine it until it gleams. With the dull, resentful glow of forced elegance, it reflects your face warped and smudged. Fitting. You hear that a priest is coming to bless the chamber. You consider hiding. Priests make you nervous. They speak like everything's already decided. Instead, you stay. You adjust towels. You realign the water bowls. You make the room look like it's never seen death. Only dignified perspiration and light conversation. About taxes, someone brings in a laurel wreath. It's placed on the bench where he sat. You glance at it. It looks like it's waiting to be blamed. The priest arrives. He murmurs things in Latin. The attendants nod solemnly, as though any of them truly believe a god would set foot in the tepidarium. The steam rises politely around the ritual. Even it knows better than to interfere. You're told to leave. You do backwards, eyes down, hands folded. Later, you're pulled aside by a lower-ranking official. He says, you did well, that you were efficient, that you're part of this moment. You nod. You try not to look horrified, part of this moment. You're in the background, that was the point. Being noticed is rarely a promotion, especially when someone ends up dead. He presses a coin into your palm. It's warm. You don't ask from where. You don't keep it, of course. You hand it over to the overseer. And you don't mention the towel. The next morning begins as if nothing happened. You're back in the caldarium, scrubbing a bench that smells like burnt oregano and unresolved tension. The towel is gone, whisked away in the night by someone more senior, more silent, and almost certainly more nervous than you. There's a new energy in the bathhouse. Not panic. Romans don't panic. They repurpose their anxiety into theater. Everyone suddenly has important matters to discuss in low voices, conveniently within earshot of others. You pass to merchants debating water temperature. With the intensity of a murder trial, a senator arrives. Not that senator, obviously a different one, but he walks the same path, same sandals. Same arch of the eyebrow that says, I am aware of my influence and your insignificance. He selects the PID. Of course he does. You're ordered to escort him. Not for safety, for optics. Nothing reassures the elite like a visibly nervous servant. He asks if the room has been purified. You nod. He sniffs. You can't. Tell if that's approval or hay fever. He lowers himself to the bench. Slowly, cautiously, like the stone. Might remember, you pour water into the bowl. He watches it steam. Then, without looking at you, he mutters, he was always too ambitious. You pretend not to hear, he continues. Too many enemies, too many speeches. Always thought heat made him stronger. You nod once, politely. Not enough to indicate agreement, just enough to suggest functional ears. He sighs and leans back. You're dismissed. You return to your usual duties, but now everyone's eyes are sharpened. The patrons are scanning each other like suspicious vegetables at market. The slaves are quieter than usual, except for one, who keeps polishing the same lamp like it holds secrets. The room echoes differently now. It hums, not with heat, but with suspicion. You hear new rumors. The senator was seen arguing the night. Before, with a rival from Hispania, he had debts. He didn't. Someone even suggests he faked his death. You've seen his face? It didn't look like acting. The official report is posted by the door. It says, natural causes. That phrase gets repeated a lot, not whispered, stated firmly, like a prayer or a password. You start hearing it in strange places, the senator. Oh yes, natural causes. Such a loss. Natural causes.
Would you like more oil?
Also natural causes. It becomes the refrain of the day. You clean another bench. You catch sight of yourself in a brass plate, tired, faded, slightly bent at the edges. Just like everyone else here, a man drops his cup. You fetch it. He thanks you. That's new you. Walk past the tepidarium again later. It's empty now, clean to clean. It gleams with the kind of polish only death or imperial paranoia can achieve. You pause, just long enough to breathe. Then you keep moving, because pausing too. Long in Rome, especially near a freshly dead senator's ghost, is how stories start. And you've seen what happens to people who become part of the story. By the third day, the bathhouse has adjusted. Not moved on, exactly, just shifted the weight of the event into a different column. What was once a death is now a story. And what was once a story is now an inconvenience. You hear it from the baker near the entrance. Poor man, he says, slicing bread too aggressively. But really, what a place to die. So public, the Strigil boy chimes in. At least he died clean. The joke lands with a dull thud. You nod, but say nothing, again, because while others turn the death into theater, you're still sweeping around the ghost. Not a literal one, though, in this place. You wouldn't be surprised, but the lingering presence of someone. Important, whose body left faster than his memory, and it lingers worst in the tepidarium. You've been told to keep it pristine. Extra mopping, extra rosewater, a new incense blend. One that smells like something between crushed pine and denial. Every day, someone visits the bench. Not to sit, just to look. They glance, they frown, they murmur. He used to sit right there, no one space over. He always preferred the south-facing wall. You know exactly where he sat. You scrub it daily today a boy arrives. Not just any boy, his son. You recognize the family resemblance, the jaw. The way he walks like the floor belongs to him, and the faint whiff of expectations, not yet crushed by politics. He enters alone. No guards, no fanfare. Just soft footsteps and a look in his eyes. That says he hasn't slept since the funeral, which notably no one in the bathhouse was invited to. He looks at the bench. You pretend to be polishing the brass again. It's your go-to strategy now. Brass never talks back. The boy speaks, not to you, but to the air. They said it was natural. You keep polishing. They said he didn't suffer. Still polishing. They say a lot of things. The cloth down. Quietly, the boy sits on the same bench. His eyes drift toward the brazier, then to the wall, then back to the floor. He stays there, not moving, for what feels like an hour. You don't interrupt. You don't clean nearby. You wait. Still, beside a cold water jug that no one wants to touch anymore. Eventually, he stands, nods once to himself, not to you, and walks out without another word. And somehow, that silence feels louder than all the political whispers combined. You go back to cleaning. The spot he sat on, stone he touched. You try not to think about how many men have sat here, talked here, made decisions that rippled out like spilled oil across the empire, and how many of them end up like the senator, half remembered, half respected, and entirely replaced. But mostly, you try not to think at all. You polish, you sweep. You breathe, and for just a moment, you sit. Not long, just long enough to feel the warmth fading from the stone, then up. Again, because your job isn't to remember, it's to remove what's left behind. By now, the tepidarium has a new nickname among the slaves. They call it the Whisper Room. Not to its face, of course. That would be ridiculous. Rooms don't have faces. But if they did, this one would have raised eyebrows and a long, judgmental stare. It's the kind of place where words go to lie down and come back sharper. The patrons don't call it anything. They just glance at it, then pretend they weren't glancing. Some still use it. Most don't linger. You've cleaned it so many times, you've started to forget what normal smells like. Now everything smells faintly of damp laurel, polished stone, and tension boiled in lavender water. You're folding towels again when two officials enter. Not senators, but the kind who stand near them. The kind who wear good sandals and smell faintly of incense and unasked questions. They enter the tepidarium alone. That's never a good sign. You follow at a distance, pretending to dust a column that hasn't collected dust since the reign of Tiberius. They speak softly, but not softly enough. I don't think it was natural, one says. Not dramatically, just as a statement, like noting the weather or a price increase in barley. Of course it wasn't, the other replies, shrugging, like someone discussing laundry. But natural causes are easier to write on a plaque. They laugh, quietly. The kind of laugh that doesn't reach the eyes. Because it's too busy watching the door, you pretend you're not listening. You're very good at pretending now. One of them sits on the bench. The bench. The ghost bench. He sighs, not the tired kind, the disappointed kind. It's a shame, he says. He wasn't very good at keeping secrets. The other nods. That's why we're still alive, as they adjust their cloaks. They leave. You remain. You stare at the bench. It doesn't look different, but it feels different, like the room's holding its breath. Or maybe you are. You resume folding towels. It's a little slower now. Each fold precise. It's each movement careful. As though the linen remembers what it saw. Another slave joins you. He doesn't speak for a while, and without looking at you, he says, "You know what happened, don't you?" You fold another towel, he adds. We all do, but we don't say it. It's how we stay alive. You nod. He picks up a towel, folds. It places it in the stack. The two of you keep working. Synchronized silence. Later, a young boy brings in a tray of citrus peels for the brazier meant to freshen the air. You thank him quietly. He shrugs. They said the smell was getting too serious. He leaves. The scent of orange zest cuts through the lavender. It helps. It's not a lot, but a little. You place the last towel on the shelf. Straighten the pile. Step back. The room is ready again. Clean. Empty. Waiting, because someone else will sit here. Someone. Always does. And when they do, the stone won't care who they are or what they've done. But you will. The death fades from the conversation, not because people stop caring, but because Rome is too busy for memory. There's always a new scandal, a new prophecy, new festival involving questionable animals. But the tepidarium doesn't forget. You walk through it now like someone stepping over a name etched in wet concrete, carefully, respectfully, hoping. It doesn't leave a mark on your feet. Today, you're polishing the water basins. Not because they're dirty, Because they're reflective. Someone decided they should sparkle, perhaps. To distract from the other things they reflect, you work with a cloth so worn it's more suggestion than fabric. You dip it in vinegar. You rub the brass until your fingers smell like sharp disappointment and fermented responsibility. A patron enters. Not one of the usual ones. He wears a dark cloak, despite the heat. He moves like someone used to silence. Doesn't sweat. He stands in the center of the tepidarium, just looking around like a man taking inventory of shadows. You try not to watch, which is difficult, because you have eyes. He runs a hand across the bench, slowly, then lifts his fingers and inspects them. Nothing there. But still, he nods. He catches you looking. You look away instantly, with commitment. But it's too late. He approaches you. Bow. He doesn't speak at first. Just looks at you, as if trying to decide what you know and whether it's too much. Then softly, "You were here." It's not a question. You nod. He studies your face. Not cruelly. Just precisely. Like he's measuring you for something unpleasant. He was talking politics. You shrugged. A neutral shrug. It's the kind that says, "I am made of towels and olive. Oil, please don't involve me." The man smirks. Wise. He doesn't ask anything else. Just walks a slow circle around the room. One more glance at the bench. Then he leaves. You don't breathe until the door closes. You go back to polishing. Basin stares up at you with watery indifference. You try to see your reflection, but it's too warped. Someone, but not quite you. That feels appropriate. Later that day, the supervisor adds a new task to your list. Wax the floors in the tepidarium. You don't ask why. Never ask. Why? You fetch the wax, a sticky, pale blob that smells like melted bees and obligations. You smear it in long, even strokes. The floor gleams. The bench gleams. The whole room begins to glow, softly, like it's trying to forget. But it doesn't, you know, because the man in the cloak wasn't there to remember the senator. He was there to make sure no one else did. And now he's seen you, which means your job isn't just cleaning anymore. It's forgetting and doing it convincingly. The whispers fade, replaced with new gossip about a scandal in the grain markets. A minor fire in the insulae, someone's second cousin being arrested for bathing with a forged token, the usual distractions. Rome is good at distraction, built an empire. On it, but you haven't forgotten. Every morning, you still pass the tepidarium first, still check the bench, still feel that ghost of heat now long gone. Today, it's empty again. For the fourth day in a row, the patrons have taken to skipping it. Too tepid, they say. Which is like saying the Colosseum is too round. Technically true. Entirely beside the point. You're adjusting towels when two women enter. Wealthy, sharp eyes. Voices like coins sliding across a table. One of them gestures vaguely toward the corner. "Wasn't it here?" she asks, like pointing at a wine stain at a banquet. The other squints. "I heard it was poison. Too clean for poison." Keep folding. They talk louder. He had enemies. Who didn't? Still, dying in the bath, how embarrassing. That's the theme now? Not tragedy, not suspicion, just embarrassment. The worst thing in this world isn't death. It's impropriety. The women leave. The room empties. You exhale, a slow breath that smells faintly of lye soap and resignation. Later, the supervisor visits. He hands you a new bottle of oil for the stone benches. Poured it, thick, smells like pine and crushed regret. He looks at the tepidarium and says, "Make it inviting again." You nod. You start with the benches, slow, circular motions. Oil seeps in, making the marble gleam like it's trying to forget what it's seen. You mop. You polish. You light new incense. This one smells like figs and smoke and something you can't quite name. Something expensive. It makes your throat feel like it's being hugged by a silk glove. Then come the sounds. Not voices. Not footsteps. Just that peculiar creak of stone. Under heat, like the room shifting in its sleep. You pause. For a moment, the bench looks wrong. Like it's not just a place, but a memory in disguise. You look away. You finish the incense. Leave the room. Outside, the sun is setting. The frigidarium is full of laughter. The palestra hums with bodies moving in synchronized vanity. Persistent as mold goes on. You take your break by the fountain. Another worker joins you, older, wears sandals worn to the shape of his regrets. He nods toward the tepidarium. Still smells like secrets in there, he says. You nod. In citrus, he laughs. They'll forget him soon. They already have. Do you think he knew? You ask, the old man thinks. Shrugs, doesn't matter now. He's right. You drink from the fountain. Cold, metallic water. Tastes like lead and inevitability. Back to work. The stone floor still needs polishing. The oil still needs spreading. The story still needs erasing. And you are very good at erasing. It's been over a week now. The tepidarium sees visitors again, but not like before. They come in pairs, sit briefly, speak in clipped phrases. No one lingers. No one reclines. No one sweats. It's no longer a chamber of relaxation, but a place where people practice not being afraid. You're back to tending the fire braziers, though the room doesn't need it. The heat is fine. But appearances must be maintained, and nothing says normal like a servant sweating on purpose. You refill the coals. You check the oil levels. You wipe the rims of the foot basins like they're goblets offered too cautious. God's dot, a new senator arrives. Younger, nervous, all elbows and borrowed confidence. He stands in the doorway looking at the bench like it owes him something. You nod, welcoming him silently as trained. He clears his throat. This is the one, isn't it? You hesitate. You consider lying. But he's not really asking. He walks over, doesn't sit, just stares at the stone. Then asks, do you think he saw it coming? What? You don't answer. Not because you're defiant. Because you've been practicing silence like a musician practices scales patiently, constantly, with sore hands. He nods to himself, as if you'd said something profound. I voted with him last season, he says. Wouldn't do it again. He smiles faintly. Not because of what happened. It's because of what he said to me the week before. You raise your eyebrows slightly more out of muscle memory than curiosity, he said. Survive the vote, and you'll survive the year. The young man snorts, didn't even survive the bath. Then he sits. You instinctively check the posture of his back. Relaxed but alert, like a man trying to nap while holding a sword under his pillow. You bring him water. You place it quietly. He doesn't touch it. You step away. 2 more men join him. Friends, probably. Rivals pretending to be friends. They talk in neutral tones about roads and tax levies and someone's new mosaic. But they glance always. At the bench, like it might start bleeding words, you tend the brazier again. You shift a coal. You adjust the tongs. You breathe. One man says they say it's safe again. Another replies, they say a lot of things. The younger senator nods, slow. He was always too sure. They all go quiet. Then almost as one, they rise. They nod politely. They leave. You remain. You sit where you always do, on the lowest step near the door, where heat and shadow meet in exhausted compromise. And for a moment, the room feels heavier. Not haunted, just full of things no one dares to name. You reach for your rag, you dip it in water. You wipe the stone, one slow circle at a time, because that's what you do. You clean, you listen, you erase. It ends not with a decree, but with a shrug, the death, the whispers, the suspicion, they all dissolve, like bathwater gone cold. No proclamation. No ceremony. Just the quiet return of routine, which in Rome is the surest sign that no one plans to change anything. The tepidarium is officially cleansed. A new mural is commissioned, dolphins, fig trees, something pastoral and unmemorable. Meant to soften the stone, to paint over the ghost. You help hang the cloth screen while the mural is plastered. The cloth keeps the dust in and the truth out. It smells like wet chalk and citrus oil. It's progress, apparently. Your schedule goes back to normal. You scrub, you pour, you polish, you nod. You avoid eye contact in proportion to the amount of political power someone has. That ratio keeps you alive. One day, a group of visitors comes through, dignitaries from another province. Curious, polite, wearing sandals that have never touched real mud. You're ordered to give a tour. Not speak, just gesture. Point. Smile blandly. You lead them through the apoditerium, the caldarium, the frigidarium, and then, of course, the tepiter. They like the temperature. They comment on the lighting. One of them gestures to the mural. Very tasteful, you nod. They never ask about the bench. Good. Later, as you return the oil jugs to their shelves, a child stops you. He's the son of one of the dignitaries. Wide-eyed, unbothered by decorum. He tugs your sleeve and asks, "Is this where the man died?" You freeze. Then kneel. You look him in the eye and say very gently, "This is where people come to feel better." He nods, satisfied, runs off. You exhale that night. The fire slaves talk. Not about politics. About aches. One has a sore ankle. One is worried about his sister's marriage. One thinks the steam rooms are haunted, but only by boredom. You. Don't mention the senator. You haven't in days. But you think of him sometimes. When you scrub that bench, and the oil catches the light just right, and the silence in the tepidarium feels one breath too long, you wonder if he ever thought it might happen here. You wonder if any of them do. You finish your last task folding the towels into that neat little stack that no one notices until it's wrong. You hang up your rag. You wash your hands. You watch the water swirl into the drain like everything you'll never say. The room behind. You glows faintly. Clean, quiet, not quite peaceful, but close enough for Rome. Tomorrow, someone new will sit on the bench. You won't flinch. You won't stare. You'll bring water. You'll wipe the stone. You'll listen for footsteps that don't belong. And when someone asks you if anything strange ever happened here, you'll smile and say, "Only once." You're sent to clean a room that isn't on the chart. It starts innocently enough. Minor collapse. Just a patch of tile in a forgotten corridor near the service stairs. Nothing dramatic. A soft crack. A gentle crumble. And suddenly there's a hole in the floor with a draft that smells like secrets. You're told not to look. Naturally, you look. There's a stairwell. Narrow. Carved from stone that's too old and too smooth to be casual. It leads down, which is always the direction trouble takes. The overseer says, "Just patch the tile." You nod. But patching requires assessing. Assessing requires standing very near the edge, which somehow becomes just a step down to check. And then, just two more to be sure, and now you're below the basha. The air is still. Not dead exactly, just ... ancient. It smells like wet dust, old ash, and something metallic that isn't quite blood, but isn't not blood either. Your torch sputters. The stairwell opens into a chamber. Small, arched, stone-lined, and wrong. Not. In a dangerous way, in a forgotten, on-purpose way, there are benches carved into the wall, low and curved, like someone once wanted to sit and not be seen. A narrow channel runs along the middle of the floor. Not quite a drain. Not quite a trench. There are no mosaics. It's no marble. Just rough carvings and dim echoes. You see it on the far wall. A figure cut into the stone with the care of someone both reverent and afraid. A man, no. A god, stabbing a bull. The bull looks resigned. The man looks determined. Round them, a scorpion, a raven, a serpent, a dog. You don't understand the scene, but it makes your stomach feel like it's holding its breath. You step closer. The god's eyes are hollowed out to clean pits where reverence used to live. Someone left a burnt offering here long turned to ash. Maybe a sacrifice. Maybe a candle. You don't know what this room was, but it wasn't for bathing. You hear a sound behind you, not footsteps. Just the kind of creak a wall makes when it remembers something. You turn. Nothing. Still. You leave. You patch the tile. Eventually, badly. You say nothing, but that night, as you fold towels, you hear two of the fire slaves whispering. One says, they found another room. The other replies again. Pause. They always say to seal it. They always do. Another pause. But the gods, they don't like being forgotten. You finish your folding. Slowly, you say nothing. But you start to watch the floor differently now. Not for cracks, but for places that might want to crack. The next morning, the overseer seals the corridor. Not with stone, with indifference. A single plank nailed across the entry, then a bench moved in front of it, as if the real goal is not to block the stairway, but to block the memory of it. You're not reassigned. That's the strangest part. Usually, curiosity earns punishment. A missing meal, a longer shift, a bruise delivered through bureaucracy. But this time, nothing. You return to folding towels. Still, something changes, you can feel. It beneath your sandals, not shaking, more like listening. The floor feels aware now, like it knows you know it's hiding something that night. You dream of hooves, not galloping. Shuffling, the kind of movement animals make when they know what's coming but walk toward it. Anyway, you wake up sweating, heart racing, hands gripping, the edge of your sleeping mat like it might run off without you. You don't mention it. Instead, you go about your routine.
I'm the Bathhouse.
Doesn't pause for personal epiphanies. Patrons still need strigils. Floors still need mopping. Life, like mildew, returns with a vengeance. But every time you pass that corridor, that not corridor, with its bench and polite silence, your eyes flick toward it. Just to check. One day, someone new arrives. A priest. But not the usual kind. No incense, no robes. It's just a dark tunic and the kind of gaze that scans beneath things. He says nothing. He walks with the overseer. Straight to the blocked-off door. They don't think. Anyone is watching. You are. They remove the bench. Quietly, no ceremony. No drama. Just a practiced motion, like scratching an old itch. They go down the stairs. You keep sweeping. They're gone for a long time when they return. They carry nothing. But their faces, especially the overseers, are different. Paler, sharper, like men who have seen something that hasn't finished being seen. The plank returns. The bench too. The priest leaves without speaking a word to anyone else. You sweep. Slower now. That night. The fire slave who sleeps nearest to the corridor sits up mid-dream. Screaming when he calms, he says he saw a bull. Standing upright. Eyes missing. Mouth moving without sound. You don't sleep much after that. No one does. Over the next week, little things begin to happen. The oil jugs in storage, all sealed, start leaking. The same tile cracks again. No. Matter how often it's repaired, the coals in the tepidarium go cold. Even when the brazier is full, someone whispers, "Mithras," and someone else tells them to stop. But the word is out. You don't say it. You don't need to. You just keep. Working with a little more care near the floor, with a little more silence near the wall, because some rooms weren't. Forgotten, they were waiting. You begin to wonder how deep the bathhouse really goes. Not just the stone, the layers. There's what's seen, the mosaics, the marble, the oily rituals of sweat and gossip. And then there's what lies beneath it all. The rooms, the silence, the parts Rome doesn't talk about but refuses to leave alone. One afternoon, while refilling the oil near the Laconicum, you overhear two patrons talking. Senators, maybe? Or the kind of men who make senators nervous. One says, "They found it again." The other mutters, "Should have left it sealed the first time." They laugh, briefly. The kind of laugh that sounds like a door creaking shut. You stay silent. Your cloth keeps moving. The oil keeps pouring. That night, the dreams come back. This time it's not. Moves its eyes. Not looking at you, looking through you. You wake to the sound of the wind, moving oddly through the bathhouse fence. It sounds almost like breath. Long, slow, heavy. The next day, you're sent below, not to the chamber itself, but to a nearby storeroom. You're to retrieve a mislaid crate of copper tools. At least that's what they say. No one mentions the chamber. The storeroom is cool, damp. It's one of those rooms that's either just above or just beside something else. The walls feel close, like they're eavesdropping. You find the crate. But you also find something else. Carvings, not official ones. Not Roman eagle standards or patron dedications. These are cruder, scratched into the plaster with whatever was nearby. Nail, knife, bone. They show a bull, a dagger, a circle of 7 stars, a man kneeling under. Flame, you run your hand across one. It's not deep, but it's fresh. Someone has been down here recently. You carry the tools back in silence. That evening, as you refill the coals in the caldarium, one of the older slaves leans in close. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. They used to say, "There were temples underground," he murmurs. "Small ones, secret ones, built when the empire still had room for fear." You ask, "What kind?" He shrugs. "The kind with gods who didn't ask for prayers, just silence and meat." You don't ask more. You light the brazier. You turn to folding. You move a little faster now, not out of fear, out of respect, because it's becoming clear that this bathhouse isn't just built on stone and piping, it's built on memory. Memory, like steam, doesn't disappear, just waits in the corners, waiting for heat. The days begin to settle, not comfortably, more like a blanket pulled over, something still breathing. The silence in the bathhouse changes tone, not peaceful, not even quiet, it's watchful, like the building itself has started listening to its own foundations. No one mentions the chamber anymore. The stairwell remains sealed, but not with bricks or nails. With habits, with practiced forgetfulness, with that most Roman of protections, public indifference. You're assigned to a new task, cleaning the hypocaust vents. They're the hollow spaces beneath the floors where heat circulates, a clever invention if you don't mind crawling through. Soot and suffocating air. It's the kind of work that leaves your knees blackened, your lungs tight, and your thoughts wandering too far for safety. You navigate the narrow crawl spaces with care. The bricks are old, uneven, slightly damp in places where they shouldn't be. The scent is layered ash, clay, and something deeper, like burnt thyme and dried blood argued into dust. Then comes the decision. One path leads to the caldarium, familiar and stifling. The other turns downward, not far, just a small tilt. But even in the dark, you can feel the angle change the way a servant can feel a patron's mood before words are spoken. You follow it not far, just enough. The air changes first. No longer hot, but still. A heavy kind of stillness, like the air has already been breathed by someone who didn't need it. Then you hear it. A sound. It's not music, not speech, even soft as fog against stone. You pause. One hand braced against the duct wall, heart suddenly aware of its own rhythm. It could be nothing, or it could be memory, still echoing in the hollow bones of the Bathhouse. Whose you don't go further. You back away, slowly, knees sliding against soot, the tunnel whispering in your ears with every inch. When the heat returns, it feels almost friendly. You emerge into the storeroom, brush the dust from your tunic, and tell no one again later. While rinsing soot from your arms at the cold fountain, a younger slave crouches nearby, scrubbing his own hands raw. He doesn't look up, just says, "You ever wonder if the gods down there remember us?" You say nothing, though part of you wants to answer, "It isn't that they remember, it's that they wait." The next morning, the vents you cleared are cold again. The firemaster says it's a blockage, but you know better. You mop the tepidarium as assigned. Near the stone bench, your rag leaves a faint dark smear, not soot, not wine, not anything you can name. You wipe it again. It fades, but doesn't vanish. You step back, place the cloth in your pail, and move on. Not quickly. It's not for few LL. Just with the understanding that some stains are not messes, they're reminders. There's a rumor now. You didn't start it? Okay. But like steam from a hidden pipe, it slips through gaps and refuses to vanish. The others say you've been below, that you saw something. The shadows near the sealed stair lean toward you. Just slightly, whenever you pass, you neither confirm nor deny. A denial draws attention. Agreement implies possession. But silence leaves room for fear. So, you just keep sweeping. It's safer that way. The rumor earns you strange privileges. Not food, not rest, not coin, just distance. A little more space on the bench. Fewer interruptions when you mow. Quieter voices in your presence, as if the others believe you're holding something fragile and unseen. That's startling, you might make it drop. One morning, the laundry boy asks, "Did you see the bull?" You reply with a slow shrug. "What bull?" He nods solemnly, as though that answer means more than words ever could. Whether he's clever or frightened, or both, you can't tell. The mood of the bathhouse shifts again. The coals seem to burn slower. The water, though hot, never feels warm. Even the incense burns too fast, its scent thin and bitter, like smoke that wants to escape something it won't name. Then the animals begin to act strangely. Cats, once content to sleep by the caldarium fires, now yowl at corners of empty rooms. The mule tethered near the courtyard plants its feet and refuses to move past the blocked corridor, as if even its stubborn bones know it lives beneath stone. You're told to ignore it. So you do, mostly. Until the boy from the laundry goes missing, no one says the word. Not taken, not gone, not vanished, just missing. As if he misplaced himself like a dropped towel. The patrons carry on. Your complaints about water temperature as theatrical as ever. But among the staff, a strange stillness takes hold. Movement slow, conversations soften. The air feels denser, like it's holding more memory than oxygen. You're sent for more coal. The storeroom sits just beyond the blocked corridor. You walk past it slowly, noting how the tile just behind the bench no longer matches the others. Something was lifted, or moved, or changed, not by accident and not with care. You don't touch it. You keep walking. Later that night, by the flickering light of a lamp, you take a piece of charcoal and draw what you remember. It's not to share, just to keep the shapes in place. The bull. The dagger. The circle of stars. The man beneath the flame. You. Hide the drawing beneath your mat. In the morning, the overseer pauses too long when he sees you. Not angry, not afraid. Just calculating, like someone asked him a question, and he doesn't want to say yes but can't say no. He reassigns you. To perimeter duty, you don't argue. Now, your job isn't just to clean. It's to see. To be the eyes of the bathhouse. To notice what flickers at the edges when no one else is paying attention. Because if something beneath this place begins to stir, it should meet someone who's already watching. They finally move. The bench. No warning, no ceremony. One morning it's there, stubborn as usual, and by afternoon it's gone, just gone, like someone decided to stop pretending. In its place, a new door. Thick, iron-studded, freshly painted with a color that tries a little too hard not to draw attention. You're told not to look at it, but that makes it worse, because now the door has become a center. Not just of the corridor, but of thought. Of superstition, of breath held a little too long whenever someone walks by. They post a guard. Not one of the usual lazy figures from the front gate either. This man has the look of someone who practices silence like a profession. Short sword. He never blinks for free. You're sent past him daily now. To sweep, to refill, to pretend. He watches you every time, and every time. You nod like a man with nothing to hide, and everything to forget. At first the others joke, quietly of course, nervous half-jokes. That there's a temple to shadows down. There, that the senators worship things that don't appear on coins. That the gods in the dirt are older, hungrier, and far less diplomatic. But jokes fade when you realize no one actually uses the corridor anymore, not even to pass through. People walk the long way around. They carry towels with arms held tighter, as though linen alone might protect them from knowledge. Even the light near that door feels wrong. Too bright some days. Too dim on others. Always flickering as though whatever's down. There can't quite decide if it wants to be seen. You're called into the overseer's quarters one evening. That never bodes well. He's seated behind his little table, sipping something that smells sharp and bitter. He doesn't speak for a long while, just stares at you like a man deciding whether to keep a tool or bury it under the floor dot. Then, casually, "You've been here a long time." You nod. He adds, "You've cleaned more corners than most know exist." Another nod. "I need someone I can trust," he says, "to keep things orderly." You know what he's not saying? You know the shape of the request, even if it's still wrapped in cloth. I need you to watch the door. At night, quietly, you accept. Because there's no safe way to refuse something phrased like a compliment. Your first night is quiet. Too quiet. The shadows lean a little differently here. Not deeper, just more patient. You sit on the stool beside the door. You try not to stare at it. You fail. It doesn't move. But you feel watched, not by the guard, not by the overseer, by the stone, the walls, the memory buried beneath. And as the hours stretch out, the bathhouse falls into its slow, nightly rhythm of dripping water and muffled snores. You realize something. You are not guarding the door. You are making sure it stays closed. On your second night guarding the door, the air changes not suddenly, not violently, but unmistakably. It's as if the door exhaled just once, and the torch beside you, dutiful and bright for hours, suddenly flickers like a servant questioning its orders. The flame stumbles, recovers, then burns with an edge that wasn't there before. You tell yourself it's just the air. You even glance upward, as if searching for a breeze that doesn't exist. It doesn't help. The corridor is still, but not in the way empty spaces usually are. This stillness feels closer, like something is waiting to hear what you'll do next. You adjust your posture on the stool, wincing at the creak of wood beneath you. A sound far too loud in a place like this. To settle your nerves, you begin to count. 17 tiles from here to the oil room, 4 to the nearest brazier. One door you are not meant to open. These numbers don't soothe, but they anchor you, like pebbles in a current that is beginning to shift. The other guard doesn't return. Whether by accident or design, you're now the only one assigned here, the only body between this strange door and whatever doesn't want to stay politely behind it. Maybe they trust you. Maybe they've already given up. You hear footsteps. Once, soft and even, receding into nothingness. Before you can decide if they were ever real, you don't follow. It's not part of your task. Your task is to remain still, alert, and ideally unnoticeable to things that might resent being noticed. Later, the torchlight stretches across the threshold. You notice it doesn't fall evenly. The shadows pool more deeply on the floor than they should, as if the stone itself bends under some unspoken agreement. You lean slightly forward and catch a scent in the air, faint, but strange, like dust mixed with old wine and limestone ground into powder by centuries of kneeling. When the laundry boy brings water, he doesn't make eye contact. He sets the cup down with careful hands, then scurries off. The water is warm, not intentionally so, but in a way that makes you wonder how long it's been sitting with its own worries. You drink it anyway, and then a sound. One knocked, not frantic, not weak, just deliberate. Like someone politely checking whether the world outside is still paying attention. You don't rise. You don't speak. You simply remain very, very still. Eventually, the torch settles. Shadows return to their assigned corners. Nothing comes through. Nothing drags you in. When your shift ends, you hand the stool over to another. He does not greet you, doesn't ask what happened. He simply sits, as if continuing a ritual, rather than replacing a man. You walk the long hallway back toward the linen shelves, your feet echoing on stone that seems to hum beneath you, barely audible, like memory mumbling in its sleep. When you catch your reflection in the polished brass cupboard, you look older than you remember. Not tired, not afraid, just worn, like a page folded one too many times, and behind you, in the blurred brass, a shape that vanishes when you turn. You don't. Look back again. You finish folding, because the next night always comes, and the door still hasn't said its last word. By the third night, the silence begins to develop texture. It no longer feels like emptiness, but presence, thick, soft, edged, and somehow aware. The air near the door doesn't just press against your skin, it wraps, like a damp wool blanket forgotten in the corner of a shrine. Too warm, too quiet. Too close, you shift on the stool. It groans again. You consider asking for a different one, a quieter one. But that would require an explanation. And explaining anything here means inviting attention. And attention these days is a kind. of permission you're not ready to give, you keep your eyes on the threshold, pretending not to notice how the light flickers just a little more every hour, or how the door's surface now seems uneven in places where it was smooth the night. Before the torch flares, dies, flares again. You watch it quietly, wondering if it's reacting to something in the room or behind the door. The flame no longer dances for you. It watches too. A senior bath attendant passes by. He's not usually on this level. You haven't seen him in weeks. Yet now he appears, humming tunelessly, barefoot, and carrying nothing. His expression is unreadable, which is its own kind of message. He walks straight past you, doesn't acknowledge the door, doesn't even glance. And yet as he moves out of sight, you notice something clutched in his fist, a strip of cloth, red with what could be pigment or something far warmer. He drops it. Accidentally? Perhaps you don't pick it up. Eventually, it disappears. When your shift ends, you linger just a little. You stand instead of sitting. The stool feels like a lie tonight, something that suggests this is a task meant to be completed. But standing feels more honest, more ancient, posture you imagine someone once took in a different century. Watching something much the same as you are now, something that hadn't yet decided whether to leave its chamber, you hear a sound. Not a knock this time, not words, a breath, long, slow, wet. It doesn't come from the door itself, but the stone beside it, as if the wall has lungs, as if the mortar has remembered something painful and decided to exhale. You take one step back, not two. Be fear. Just one. Just enough to respect the boundary that no one ever named, but everyone obeys. When the torch flares again, it does so with a puff of heat. A final cough before steadying itself. You reach up and adjust it, pretending this moment is normal and maybe in Rome. 'Tis the wall returns to silence. The door remains closed. You breathe in air that tastes faintly of minerals. Chalk and something like old milk boiled too long. A flavor you remember from the slave kitchens. When the pot's burned and no one dared scrape the bottom, when your replacement arrives, he avoids your gaze. You step aside without a word. The corridor feels different now. Less like a hallway, more like a throat. And as you walk away, feel the warmth of the torch on your back, but not the way a fire warms you, the way a stare does. The fourth night. The door speaks not in words. Of course not. That would be merciful. What you hear instead is a slow rhythm like water dripping onto dry earth, then echoing through a cavern much too large for a bathhouse. One drop, then a pause, then another. Not chaotic, deliberate. Uncomfortably patient. It continues for an hour. You don't investigate. You've learned by now that curiosity is the bathhouse's favorite form of invitation. Instead, you close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to listen better. And what you hear underneath the drip is worse. Breathing, not the sigh of a sleeping attendant down the corridor, not even yours. This breath is older, slower, like something pacing behind the walls. Made of lungs the size of basins and a heart that beats only once a day, you open your eyes. The torch has gone out. You hadn't noticed. There's still light, faint, and flickering, but it's not coming from the torch. It's leaking from under the door. It casts no proper shadows, just stains. You don't move. Not forward, not back. Simply wait, arms tucked against your chest. Breath tight in your throat like a borrowed oath you're not supposed to speak aloud. The light holds, and then it fades. It doesn't vanish, it withers. Like a flame embarrassed. To have been noticed, the stone returns to its proper gray. The silence grows heavy again, but now you know it can lift. Later, you find scratches on the door. 3 marks, parallel. Too clean to be accidental. Too deep to be fingernails? You run your hand over them. They're cool, not cold, cool, like a coin pulled from beneath someone's tongue. You don't mention them to anyone. The 5th night, the torch stays lit. The 6th, no sound at all. But on the 7th night, something changes again. When you arrive for your shift, there's already someone standing in front of the door. Not a guard, not a worker, a woman. dressed in gray wool, clean but plain, with eyes that don't look at you. They include you. Like a horizon that already expects your presence, you stop. She says nothing. You wait. Eventually, she turns and walks away. No words, no gesture. Just quiet departure, as though she came not to guard the door, but to remind you that you're not the only one who listens to it. You sit. You feel the heat of the torch. You feel the echo still trembling through the stone. You feel the door waiting, and this time it feels less like it's trying to get out, and more like it's trying to decide if you're ready to be let in. The 8th night passes without sound. The 9th hums quietly, and by the 10th, you start to feel the shift, not in the air, but in yourself. You've sat with the door long enough that your thoughts have begun to echo. Your breaths have started to match its rhythm. Your eyes drift toward it, not with fear, but with something worse. Familiarity. By now, you no longer imagine what's behind it. You imagine what might happen if it opened and nothing was there. All this watching, waiting, listening, the flickering torches, the bad dreams, the soft knocks, the strange visitors, led to only a room with stone walls and a smell of damp ash. That would be the cruelest ending of all. That it was never magic, never gods, just a space people forgot how to name. And yet, that feels wrong too. You don't believe in dramatic answers, but you also know the torch has burned longer than it. Should that the floor near the threshold has worn smooth and away footsteps never caused? That the sounds you've heard have shaped many shape-like sounds. In too short a time to dismiss as your imagination looking for patterns, tonight no one relieves you. You sit the whole shift alone. The hall stretches long and quiet. Like an old scroll someone keeps meaning to read again. The walls don't creak. The torches don't waver. Even the rats seem to avoid this part of the building now, and still, the door waits. You think about pushing it open? Just a little? Just to see. The thought doesn't feel like yours, which is how you know it's dangerous. So instead you do something else. You speak, not a question, not a command. Just your name. Quietly, flatly. A name no patron has ever asked for. A name you've barely used aloud. The kind of name that lives only in your head and on the small slate tablet where your food rations are. Scratched once a week, you say it in too. The dark the door doesn't move. The air doesn't shift, but you hear your name. Again not echoed. Returned. A breath later. Softer. Slightly altered. Like it passed through something thick before reaching back to you. You sit with that for a while, not speaking again, not even breathing deeply. Just sitting very still, while your name floats between the space of two realities and pretends to belong to both. When dawn finally touches the corridor, you rise. Your knees creak like bad memory. Your back feels older than you are. Your hands smell like oil and iron and old wax, none of which you touched tonight. You nod once to the door, not out of respect, out of recognition, because after 10 nights, it is no longer just a sealed passage. It is your mirror, and like all mirrors, in Rome, it shows not who you are, but who you're about to become. You don't notice her at first. She's just part of the background, another moving piece in the complicated machinery of the bathhouse. See the towels she manages more than the woman herself? Folded triangles in perfect rows, all linen, all slightly frayed at the edges, all smelling faintly of vinegar, lime, and smoke. No one tells you her name. You hear it eventually, of course, Crispina muttered with a strange mixture of deference and fear.
Right.
The way people might speak of an aunt who remembers too much and never forgets a favor owed. She doesn't shout, doesn't rush, doesn't spill. She just ... appears. Wherever she needs to be. Wherever a towel is missing, or a customer is about to complain, or a junior slave is thinking about skipping a corner during folding. She is always already there, holding exactly what's needed, looking unimpressed. You start to wonder if she lives here. Not metaphorically, actually. Her eyes never carry the blur of someone newly arrived. Her hair is always pinned exactly the same, with a strip of ribbon that somehow never stains. She smells like boiled cloth and cardamom.
Not pleasant.
Exactly. Just definitive. Crispina doesn't own the towels. She is the towels. If you believe the whispers, she's been working the concession since before the emperor legalized oat bread. One slave claims she folded for Hadrian. Another says she once ran a towel scam that got a praetor, reassigned to Syria. The story's conflict, Crispina never comments. You try to stay out of her way. Not because she's cruel, she's not, but because she sees everything. The first time you underfolded a drying cloth, she didn't scold you. She just handed it back without looking and said, "Try again," as if someone might use it. Die! That stayed with you longer than a whipping would have. Her corner of the bathhouse is a small empire. 3 benches, 1 folding table, a barrel of sour water, a rack of pressed linen tied in color-coded loops you don't understand. Her ledger carved into a wax tablet the size of a shield is always accurate. She knows who owes which towel for how long, and who tried to walk off with one last Tuesday. You once saw a centurion try to skip paying the linen fee. He didn't make it past the hot bath. Crispina didn't raise her voice. She just looked up and said, "You'll want to return that before someone else decides to return it for you." He did. With apologies, you never saw him again. People assume the bathhouse is ruled by the overseer. They're wrong. It's her. And now, one morning, she calls you over. You freeze, towel in hand, rag in pocket. Guilt rising in your throat for no specific reason, just the kind of general fear Crispina tends to summon. Like an oracle who knows where you were on a night you thought no one was watching, she points to a stack of drying cloths. They've been folded wrong. You nod. She watches you then. Fix them. Properly. If they fall over, so will you. And then she turns away. Not angry, not even stern, just efficient. And somehow, it's worse. You don't notice her at first. She's just part of the background. Another moving piece in the complicated machinery of the bathhouse. You see the towels she manages more than the woman herself. Folded triangles in perfect rows. All linen, all slightly frayed at the edges, all smelling faintly of vinegar, lime, and smoke. No one tells you her name. You hear it eventually, of course, Crispina muttered with a strange mixture of deference and fear.
Right.
The way people might speak of an aunt who remembers too much and never forgets a favor owed. She doesn't shout, doesn't rush, doesn't spill. She just ... appears. Wherever she needs to be. Wherever a towel is missing, or a customer is about to complain, or a junior slave is thinking about skipping a corner during folding. She is always already there, holding exactly what's needed, looking unimpressed. You start to wonder if she lives here, not metaphorically, actually. Her eyes never carry the blur of someone newly arrived. Her hair is always pinned exactly the same, with a strip of ribbon that somehow never stains. She smells like boiled cloth and cardamom.
Not pleasant.
Exactly. Just definitive. Crispina doesn't own the towels. She is the towels. If you believe the whispers, she's been working the concession since before the emperor legalized oat bread. One slave claims she folded for Hadrian. Another says she once ran a towel scam that got a praetor, reassigned to Syria. The story's conflict, Crispina never comments. You try to stay out of her way. Not because she's cruel, she's not, but because she sees everything. The first time you underfolded a drying cloth, she didn't scold you. She just handed it back without looking and said, "Try again," as if someone might use it. Die! That stayed with you longer than a whipping would have. Her corner of the bathhouse is a small empire. 3 benches, 1 folding table, a barrel of sour water, a rack of pressed linen tied in color-coded loops you don't understand. Her ledger carved into a wax tablet the size of a shield is always accurate. She knows who owes which towel for how long, and who tried to walk off with one last Tuesday. You once saw a centurion try to skip paying the linen fee. He didn't make it past the hot bath. Crispina didn't raise her voice. She just looked up and said, "You'll want to return that before someone else decides to return it for you." He did. With apologies, you never saw him again. People assume the bathhouse is ruled by the overseer. They're wrong. It's her. And now, one morning, she calls you over. You freeze, towel in hand, rag in pocket. Guilt rising in your throat for no specific reason, just the kind of general fear Crispina tends to summon. Like an oracle who knows where you were on a night you thought no one was watching, she points to a stack of drying cloths. They've been folded wrong. You nod. She watches you then. Fix them. Properly. If they fall over, so will you. And then she turns away. Not angry, not even stern, just efficient. And somehow, that's worse. Eventually, you're trusted to sort the linen. Not all of it. It's just the used but not ruined pile. Towels that have been steamed, rinsed, boiled. In water angry enough to peel paint, but still smell faintly of bathhouse regrets. These are the towels that have stories. Crispina insists they not mingle with the fresh ones. She calls them tired cloth. You don't ask why. She gestures toward a bench and leaves you to it. There are no instructions. It's just a stack, a shallow basin, and the weight of invisible standards pressing against your spine. You sort by feel. Some towels are soft enough to whisper. Others have gone stiff at the corners, like they've decided to resist folding altogether. A few have stains and shapes that resemble maps of forgotten provinces, none of which you're brave enough to identify. You fold slowly, then redash fold halfway. Through the pile, you glance over at Crispina. She's not looking at you. She's staring into a barrel of hot rinse water with the solemn expression of someone interrogating a prophecy. You're not sure what she sees there, but after a moment, she murmurs, "Someone left in a hurry." You pause. She doesn't explain, doesn't say who. Doesn't clarify whether she means yesterday, last week, or some far older departure still clinging to the towels like oil to skin. You nod. Then go back to folding. This is how it works now. She speaks in fragments. You decode them through linen. You learn the difference between clean and ready. You learn that a towel folded in haste will fall apart when picked up by someone who's angry. That's not superstition. That's just physics with bad manners. There are rules you don't find, written anywhere. If a man asks for 3 towels, give him 2 and a compliment. If someone requests a towel after the 6th hour, they're hiding something. If anyone returns a towel dry, do not ask. Just mark their name quietly. You come to understand that towels, like coins, change hands in ways that tell stories. They carry more than moisture. They carry politics, embarrassment, failed seductions, and the quiet triumph of a man who got a seat in the hot room for once without being elbowed out. And through it all, Crispina remains steady. She never stumbles, never explains, never pretends the towels are just towels. She folds like she's keeping promises, like the linen itself might testify one day. She wants her record to be immaculate. You finish your sorting, you stack the towels in the approved order, frayed edges inward, softest to roughest, with the slightly scorched ones placed at the bottom, where no one will reach unless they deserve it. Crispina inspects the pile. She doesn't smile, that would ruin everything, but she says, "Good." Just that, it's the first time she's used that word. It's near you. You carry it with the same care you use for linen, flat, balanced, without crease or stain. You don't say thank you. You don't need to. You fold, you breathe, you begin again. You begin to notice that Crispina never sits. She stands from dawn to the last towel, her feet wrapped in cloth slippers more patched than present. Never stop moving, even if only to shift weight or slide an elbow to nudge a basin closer. You'd think she'd sit just once, even to rest her back or check her ledger. But no. She moves as if rest is the first step toward forgetting. You ask her about it once, she looks at you the way an owl might look at a mouse who's asked if the world is safe. Stools break, she says. And chairs remember. You don't ask again. Instead, you start standing a bit longer yourself. Some days she vanishes for hours, not during rush periods. She would never abandon her post when towels are being snatched like bread on festival. Days. But during the quiet times, when the only patrons left are diplomats whispering over steam or widows humming tunelessly in the cold pools, Crispina is gone. When she returns, she carries nothing, but her ribbon is always slightly damp. You wonder where she goes, you think? Maybe she bathes, but no one has ever seen her do it, and the idea feels incorrect. Like picturing a tree doing embroidery. Not impossible. Just against the natural order. You once follow her, not intentionally. You were carrying a basin down the hall, and she turned the corner ahead. You turned too. But by the time you reached it, the corridor was empty. The stones still echoed slightly, but only with your own steps. She reappeared 20 minutes later at her bench, folding as if she'd never moved. Sometimes, you think she's not a person at all. Just a kind of towel-shaped ghost made real by routine and vinegar scent. The patrons treat her the same way you do. Some offer coins, she refuses. Others offer gossip. She listens, but says little in return. A few flirt. They don't flirt twice. Once, a senator drops a silver ring near her. Bench intentionally. A smooth bit of performance, as if he expects her to scoop it up and say something clever. Crispina picks it up, turns it in her fingers, places it gently into the rinse bucket. He doesn't try again. There are rumors about her past, of course. Some say she used to own the Bathhouse. Some say she was once a priestess, exiled for not dying when told to. Others say nothing, just glance toward her when a towel is missing and whisper. You never ask. You don't need to. Instead, you fold beside her now. Not every day, but more than before. She doesn't praise. She doesn't criticize. She just adjusts a corner, nods slightly, and hands you the next piece of linen. Not like a superior commanding a servant, but like a potter passing clay to someone with fingers she might eventually trust. And you fold it carefully, because she never folds. Something twice, she doesn't have to. You begin to realize that Crispina keeps secrets in piles, not hidden behind curtains or under floorboards. She doesn't need to. She hides them in plain sight, stacked neatly and labeled as laundry. There are towels for senators, towels for slaves, towels for patrons who ask too many questions, and towels that never leave the second shelf clean, folded, and waiting. For someone who hasn't returned, you once asked about those. She didn't answer. Just placed one on the table with the gentleness reserved for offerings, smoothed its edge and moved on. It smelled like ash and almond oil. You decide not to ask again. By now, you know the order of things. The first towels go to the ones who tip in advance, the cleanest ones to the dirtiest customers, irony preserved like vinegar in an amphora. The ones with stitching errors to the men who brag the loudest in the cold plunge. Crispina never explains these choices. She simply makes them one after another, without ceremony. Her ledger may track names and payments, but her memory handles everything else: who insulted whom, who forgot their child in the changing hall, who came in with a limp and left without one. She notices everything, including you. Your hands are steadier now. Your folds sharper. Your stacking less tragic. One afternoon, you return from hauling a basket and find she's not at the table. Just a note, scratched on wax. Boil the rough batch. All towels. All beige. All vaguely identical. You don't panic. That's lesson 1. You touch each piece. Run your hands across the fibers. Feel for resistance, for grit, for a kind of tension in the fabric that says, I survived something. Shouldn't have had to. You pick 10. Boil them. When she returns, she doesn't speak. Just brushes her hand across the drying line, nods once, and walks away. You stand a little straighter for the rest of the day. Later, as dusk settles and the bathhouse empties into the sighing silence of half-cooled stones, she hands you a folded towel without a word. You open it not to use, but to understand. Inside, stitched into the corner, are 2 small letters. Yours, your name, or the closest thing to it, sewn in tiny thread, hidden from view, unless someone went looking. You look up. She's already turning away, back to her ledger. No speech, no smile. Just the quiet acknowledgement of presence. The towel smells like vinegar and bay. if you fold it perfectly and place it on the bottom of the stack, not because it's worse, because you understand now. Some things are meant to be reached. For slowly, the towel station begins to feel like a kind of sanctuary, not for prayer. Exactly, though. Sometimes, under the steam, under the endless rules, under the glances of senators and slaves alike, it feels close. It's quiet, for one thing. No barking orders. No raised voices. Just the soft thump of damp linen dropped into bins, the rhythmic creak of wooden drying racks, and Crispina, always folding. She doesn't hum. She doesn't sigh. Her silence is deliberate, like parchment never written on, just in case someone important might need it later. And yet, people come to her, not always for towels. Once a woman approaches, soaked, furious, trailing drops of water like punctuation. Her sandals slap the tiles. Her husband a few paces behind. Looks like he's aged a month in the last hour. Crispina does not flinch. The woman launches into complaint. Missing clothes. Insulted dignity, a servant too. Slow and a second-rate oil. The kind of problem that can only exist when every real problem has already been paid to go away. Crispina listens. Doesn't blink then. Gently. Perhaps a smaller towel would better suit your posture. The woman blinks. The husband looks down. No. More is said. Later, you ask if she meant it as an insult. Crispina answers, if she took it that way, she folded it herself. She says things like that, little phrases, folded into the moment like secret hems, neat, dry, and deadly if ironed. Too hot, you begin to adopt her language. Not the words, you could never deliver them properly, but the pauses, the precision, the understanding that silence used correctly is more effective than a shout and cheaper than a bribe.
One morning, she doesn't appear. You arrive early, like always, expecting to see her ribbon bobbing past the rinse barrel.
But her bench is empty, her ledger closed. Your stomach drops. No note, no instructions, just a full basket already rinsed. You begin folding. It feels strange at first. Not wrong, exactly, but echoing. Like performing a ceremony without the priest, or dancing after the music has left. By the 5th towel, your hands remember. By the 10th, you're working by rhythm, not thought. And then she returns mid-morning, holding a bundle wrapped in linen. Not speaking as she passes. She unwraps it slowly. A new bolt of cloth, unmarked. Bright as milk, still warm from the sun. She doesn't explain where it came from. You don't ask. Instead, you help her unroll it, cut it, soak the edges, stack the panels. One by one, she hums just once as she folds the first of the new towels. It isn't a tune. More like a breath catching on memory, she hands you one to fold. You do it carefully, like it matters, like you've done it before, and want to keep doing it, again because you do. The cloth is smooth, light, untouched, and you know it won't stay that way. Nothing. In this bathhouse does. Crispina begins to trust you with her ledger. Not all of it, just the edge pages. The margins, the not quite tallies that sit beside real names, real debts, and mysterious symbols that might mean paid in full or likely to borrow again. She doesn't explain the code. She doesn't need to. After a week, you begin to recognize patterns the same way you recognize steam. It rises, it curls, and eventually, it tells you something about who's nearby. You're not sure what it means. When she lets you carry it just once, just across the room. But the wax tablet is heavy in your hands, heavier than it should be, like it remembers too many conversations. You move slowly, afraid to smudge it. The stylus, tucked neatly between the straps, feels like a weapon you're not yet trained to use. Crispina nods. When you return it, that's all. But you carry that nod for days. You start to see the bathhouse differently. The towels were always symbols of class, of cleanliness, of who gets to be dry and who stays damp. But now you see the rhythms beneath. The men who enter late and leave early. The women who request a fresh one before saying anything at all. The quiet traders who tip too much, say too little. You realize how much the towels know, and how much Crispina knows through them. She says things now and again that feel like accidents. That's his 3rd towel this week. He never folds when she's in the room. Careful, she keeps oil in the left sandal. And each time, you nod as though that's normal, 'cause it is. At least here, one afternoon she teaches you how to turn a ripped towel into two smaller ones. It's not just cutting, it's choosing where to cut, where the wear won't show, where the stain won't speak. She moves the shears like someone tuning a harp. You try to follow. Your hands tremble just enough to make the first slice uneven. She says nothing. Later, she recuts it perfectly, leaves your version nearby. Not discarded, just quietly demoted to mop duty. You're not insulted, you understand. Some towels become lessons, others become warnings. You don't repeat the mistake. The next time, you measure twice. Cut once, press with your palm, fold without flinching. She accepts the result, stacks it, moves on, and you feel, just for a breath, just for one corner of the day, like you belong to something that knows how to fold back around you, not embrace, just function, just form. You start staying later, not to impress her, not even for extra rations, just because the quiet of linen and vinegar and steam feels safer than the world outside, where people talk too loudly and never mean what they say. Here, if a towel folds badly, someone will notice, and that oddly feels like kindness. 1. Evening, she lets you hold the key. Not for long. Just a moment. Just long enough to move it from one hook to another, while she rearranges a stack that's decided to lean like it's had too much wine. Still, the weight of it surprises you. Thick bronze, worn at the teeth, cool as regret, you don't ask. What it unlocks? There's only one cupboard it could belong to. It's the one she never opens during the day. It's the one built into the stone, just below the shelves of unclaimed cloth. You've seen her slide it open exactly once, late at night, when she thought no one was watching. You saw the faint shimmer of silk. Bathhouse slaves don't touch silk, and Crispina, for all her power, is still a slave. Officially, unofficially. Toto, you suspect Rome itself would collapse if she ever left. You return the key. She takes it without looking. Doesn't thank you. Doesn't need to. The gesture was the message. You're trusted enough now to touch something locked. She sends you on a delivery next towels to the private chamber. The one reserved for the most delicate senators, the ones who claim ailments that conveniently exempt them from military duty but not from expensive oils and long soaks. You knock, you wait, no answer, you enter. As instructed, eyes low, steps careful. The air is thick, not with heat but perfume. The scent of roses, yes, but behind it something. Cloying, almost sweet with rot. The water in the tub is still steaming, but no one's inside. It's just a folded robe, a ring, and a single towel, already damp, resting over the edge. You do not touch it. You place the clean stack beside the basin. Back away slowly. Close the door when you return. Crispina is folding. You say nothing. She glances up, sees something in your face, and asks, "Was the ring gold or bronze?" You blink. Gold. She nods. It'll be bronze by morning. You don't ask what she means. You know, somehow it's not about the metal later. She teaches you how to pack the bundles for the boil. There's a way to knot the cloth so it doesn't choke the fibers. A way to fold the oil-stained ones so they don't leak their stories onto cleaner towels. She's done this for years, clearly. But tonight, she speaks as she works softly, rhythmically, almost like reciting. A psalm. You can tell who's dying, she says, by how they fold when they think no one's watching. You nod. Not because you understand fully, but because you want to. You tie the bundle just as she showed you. Lay it down, pat it once. Not superstition, not reverence, just respect. The door creaks. Someone enters. Crispina. Doesn't pause. Close the door, she says. And it does all by itself. You don't mention it, neither does she, instead. You light the next lamp. You reach for another towel, and you keep folding. You start to dream in folds. Not dreams like visions or omens, more like muscle memory sneaking into your sleep. Shh. In your mind, linen moves beneath your hands, edges align. Creases settle with the softness of breath. You wake up halfway through a corner fold, fingers twitching against your blanket. You don't tell anyone. It would sound strange, even here, where strange is folded, rinsed, and handed out daily. Crispina notices, of course. Not the dreams. Your hands. She watches the way you stack without looking, the way your fingers adjust a hem before your eyes have registered the misalignment. She doesn't comment. She just shifts a small pile to your side and keeps folding. It feels like being knighted, but with damp linen instead of swords. By now you understand the rhythm of the station. The high tide of towels after the 6th hour, the lull when senators linger too long in the steam, the sharp rush of bodies and voices just before sunset, when every man thinks he deserves the last dry cloth. You manage it smoothly almost, until the day someone takes one without asking, you don't see it happen. You just notice the stack is short, off by one. Not a big thing, not a disaster, but you know the count. You always know the count. You check the floor, the barrels, the hooks. Gone, you tell Crispina. She pauses, just for a second. A flicker of stillness, like a flame deciding whether to stay. Then she says, "Was it looped red or blue?" You think blue? She nods. Then folds the towel in her hands a little slower, a little tighter. The next morning, the towel reappears. It's not in the pile. In the cold basin, soaked, torn at the edge, Crispina says, "Nothing." But she moves the red towels to the front of the stack for 3 days. Straight. You don't ask why. You begin to understand that towels are like people. They go missing when they shouldn't come back changed. Rarely explain what happened in between. Some never return. There's one towel in the corner, always folded, never handed out, embroidered with gold thread, loopless, thick as a senator's pride. Once reached for it, Crispina's hand touched your wrist, firm as a wall. That one's retired, she said. You ask no more. Some days she lets you open the linen rolls yourself. It's not about strength. It's about knowing where to press, how to tug, where to catch the edge that wants to stay hidden. You learn to unravel just enough. No more. The linen should open like trust, slowly and with room to breathe. You grow quiet these days. Not because you're scared, not because you're tired, just because silence suits you better now. Like a towel that no longer needs to prove it. Clean, Crispina folds. You fold beside her, the world beyond the bathhouse. Buzzes with voices and coins and rules that change with the emperor's mood. But here, one towel goes missing, and the whole room tilts. You might walk out the front gate someday. You might be reassigned, sold, even granted freedom with a wax tablet and a handshake from someone who never learned your name. But a part of you, the part that knows the weight of the boiled cloth, the sound of wet linen thudding into a barrel, the feel of a red loop between your fingers, that part will stay, folded neatly. Tucked between vinegar and steam, she never says goodbye. Crispina doesn't strike you as someone who believes in parting words. If someone disappears, she marks it quietly, shifts a pile, burns a towel, adds a small notch to the corner of the ledger no one else can read. You ask her once what happens to the towels that can't be saved. She replies, "Same thing that happens to everyone else." Then she moves on. There's a rhythm to the final days. You both feel it, though neither of you mentions it aloud. The towels still come. The stacks still lean. The steam still curls around the walls like the breath of something half asleep and mildly disapproving. And then, one morning, she doesn't arrive on time. The bench is empty. The ledger is closed. But her ribbon is there, folded once, laid flat on the table. Clean, centered, waiting. You sit, not at her bench. You're not that. Bold, you sit nearby, close enough to watch the ribbon. Far enough not to claim it. By midday, someone sends word. Crispina has been called away. Not punished, not sick. Just called to where? No one knows. For how long? No one asks. She's simply gone. Like a towel retired without ceremony. You finish? The folding. You check the loops, you tie the bundles, and double-check the knots. The bench creaks under your hands. Not from weight, but from uncertainty. like it's trying to remember how to stand without her. You open the ledger. Only the edge. Pages? You add a mark, not her name? That's not how this works. Just a folded line, when she would recognize. Then you return to work, because someone must. Because the towels keep coming. Because silence, if left alone long enough, eventually becomes a kind of authority. And now you are the one who says, no, not that one. The one who adjusts a crooked fold before it becomes a problem. The one who knows who left with more than they brought in. You never tie your hair with the ribbon. You keep it in the small drawer beneath the table. Wrapped, clean, unclaimed maybe. You'll need it someday. Maybe not. But either way it will wait. The way towels wait. The way steam listens. The way someone must always stand beside the folds and say again, but better this time. And when someone asks who trained you, you smile. You fold. You say no one. Because some things are passed down, not taught. And Crispina, wherever she is, would approve. And now the towels are folded. The steam has faded. The ledger is closed. Just for tonight, you've walked the corridors, sat with silence, held a ribbon that smelled like time. Maybe you're still awake. Maybe you're listening with one ear. Wondering if that quiet knock behind the bathhouse door ever came again. Maybe not. But either way, thank you for staying, for folding gently, for breathing slowly, for reaching the end without rushing. You'll return tomorrow, as all things do, to the towels, to the heat, to the rhythm. And tonight, you are the one who must carry the basket once more.